Hey, what's up? Good morning. This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario. OakRidgeFord.com. Need a new vehicle? I am your guy. Whether new, pre-owned, SUV, sedan, F-150, I've got it. At Norman Oak Ridge Ford on Instagram. A few days left in the month of April. Massive deals. Doesn't matter where you are. Reach out to me. I will look after you. The Convo back in action after a couple of days off. Game 4 is in the books. Mr. Augello and the Maple Leafs are down in the series 3-1 after a 3-1 loss to the Bruins at Scotiabank Arena last night. For my money, the worst performance I've seen with this contemporary group in the playoffs. They've had a lot of bad ones. They've had some decent ones, some good ones. This right there, forget the stat line, ranks right at the bloody bottom. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Norm. If it's not the worst, it's one of them.
Yeah.
But there's been so many examples of just pathetic play in the playoffs that it's tough to filter through. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, and I think I mentioned this on the last pod, and it's dumbfounding, this statistic that now in the last 9 playoff games, they are 1-8, and that a team 1-8 at Scotiabank Arena. I don't know how they ever won a round going 1-8 at home. I just did a pod with Kevin Allen, and he had said, well, most teams, the way it breaks down is it's 500 at home. Yeah, they'd take 500. If they had 3 more victories, that means they probably would have won a series. And this is the infuriating thing. And I don't want to hear any criticism of Maple Leaf fans, of the fans in the building, of the corporate whatever at Scotiabank Arena. I don't want to hear about it in terms of them being quiet or them not being in their seats. If I was a fan and I was at this game, I wouldn't be in my seats watching this the way this team has played in the playoffs. They've been atrocious. Mm-hmm. And there are, we'll go through this, but all the excuses in the world, Matthews being sick. And do I doubt he's sick? No, I don't doubt he's sick. I'm sure he is. And he, apparently was, he was very sick for game 3 and he played through it. I give him a lot of credit for that. Nylander with migraines. I know people with migraines, you can't even get out of bed. It's tough. I get it. So, Mitch Marner coming back from the high ankle sprain. Okay. I mean, all these things. Joseph Wall coming back from the high ankle sprain. All these things going into the playoffs. Other teams have these issues and they somehow fight through. And this team, now, whether it's bad luck that all their key players, they're reliant on 5 key players to make a difference. And if those guys are not operating at 100%, then there's not much to fall back on. And when certain things happen with certain marginal players, and it was just mentioned in one of the quotes there, and he puts you behind the 8 ball less than 10 minutes into the first period, you're screwed. Mm-hmm. And that team last night, with all the pressure on them to get off to a good start against a team that has pretty much dominated them in 3 games, to have a pizza thrown up the middle by Ryan Reeves and James Van Riemsdyk, like the former Leaf, scoring that goal and put him behind the 8 ball after 1 period. I mean, anybody who's a Leaf fan looked at that game after 1 period and said, they're not coming back. And they didn't.
This is the Convo for Oak Ridge Ford. Norm in London, Mike in Buffalo. That was a tough situation because it required a tough save. And Ilya Samsonov has shown throughout the series he can make saves, but not the big one. I mean, at that point, it's hard to understand just the magnitude of that goal and that giveaway and how it would force the Leafs into a place that they're not very good in and give Boston that much more ammo to go to work against the Maple Leafs. And again, here we are, another Boston Bruins result with a win, and us continually complaining about a team that we know isn't good enough, but we still want more from. OG's converts, what say you? Like the content, subscribe to the channel. The idea was to do a lot of content over a bunch of weeks, maybe potentially months, but with the Leafs facing elimination in Game 5. Is this one back in Boston, Mike? That should be fun.
Yes, on Tuesday.
Yeah, that That should be fun. The entire team. Nobody on the team played well, and I said right off the top, this is one of the worst games I've seen this contemporary group of Leafs play in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But I didn't see anybody who was doing anything of substance. I mean, we could go from the goaltending out. There was. I mean, it's not like the effort wasn't there. The effort is there. It's almost like they weren't aware of the circumstances.
Well, I mean, how
yeah, go ahead.
How dumb can you be if you're not aware of the circumstances? You've played this team. This core group has played this team twice in a 7-game series in the last 6 years. So they know what the deal is. This is a team in their division. They know what the deal is, and they know the circumstances. Now you said, Samsonov, he made big saves in game 2 and they won the game. He has not made big saves in game 1 and in game 3. And in this game, 3 goals. I mean, did he really have a chance on the Marchand one-timer on the power play? Maybe not, because the penalty killing is abysmal. Did he have any chance whatsoever on a 2-on-0 break late in the second period that Pasternak scored? No. And again, this team, it did not look. Do I think that they tried? Of course they think they tried. Right. They're professionals. But it did not look that their level of compete was at the level of the Boston Bruins compete for the first 2 periods. And then in the third period, with desperation and them down 3-0, they actually hustled. And that's the thing. That's the thing that's infuriating. Where the hell was the hair on fire and the desperation in the first and second period in a game that if you lose, you're done? And don't get me wrong, folks, they're done. It's just a question of how long. It's just a question, do they win in Boston in game 5 and then force it to come back to game 6 so they can lose another game at home? It's very possible, but they're done. And they played Joseph Woll in the third period. I'm not putting all the blame on Ilya Samsonov. There is a lot of other people to blame. But I think the only chance you have is shake things up, put Woll in goal for game 5, see if you can get a spark, and go from there. And then if he wins that game, if he loses the game, the season is over with, and he wins the game, they play game 6 in Toronto. I think it's on Thursday. Right. So to me, that's the no-brainer move. Whether he goes back, if it's me, Ilya Samsonov has played his last game as a Toronto Maple Leaf.
Wow. Is he a guy that has to be a victim? Does he have to be somebody to optically take the hit for how things have devolved over the course of these playoffs? Or do we go back to the time that he was having these mental breakdowns and say, this would be the inevitability anyway, regardless of any kind of run he would put together?
Well, I mean, okay, after the struggles in November and December and the reset, and he played well from mid-January until the last week of the regular season, and then he had a couple games and where he did not play well coming into the playoffs. I'm sure that didn't do a lot for his mental strength and his confidence. He played badly in game 1. I think he played pretty decent in game 2. He made some key saves. It was a 2-2 game, and then Matthews scores on that breakaway goal. And then game 3 and game 4, I think he's been below average. And this team, with their flaws, Norm, they cannot have below average goaltending.
So, Mike, when he doesn't make the big save on James Van Riemsdyk, I know it was a giveaway and it was a gimme, but Van Riemsdyk psyched him out, went 5-hole. When he doesn't make that save, it exacerbates the other goals he gives up that aren't his fault. And again, the Leafs need some kind of a savior. Ilya Samsonov's just not cut out for it. It's not his problem, but it is his problem. It's all of these guys' problems.
They need, the goaltending, the type of goaltending that the Leafs need right now is the goaltending that they got from Joseph Woll just before he got hurt. Right. He was playing, he was stoning Ottawa in a game. He was really good against Boston. I think it was in an overtime loss. he was standing on his head. That's the type of goaltending they need right now, because if they're getting average goaltending out of Samsonov, and I want to stress, I'm not blaming Samsonov solely for them being down 3-1, but they need a spark, and I don't think that they're going to get that by putting Samsonov back in the game. Now, last night, they take Liljegren out. Apparently he was hurt. He's been hurt. And they put in TJ Brody, and TJ Brody playing the right side has been a disaster for probably the last half of the season.
Yeah.
But they had no other choice. If it's either that or put Giordano or Connor Timmins in the game. And I don't think they were going to do that. So again, this team, the way they've been constructed, you cannot put together. Look at the team that you're losing to. Look at this construction of their blue line. They have 2 number 1 defensemen in Lindholm and in McAvoy. Lindholm was a number 1 in Anaheim. They got him. Now they have 2 number 1s. So that means you can put one of those guys on both of your defensive pairings, your top 2 defensive pairings, and that is going to be an excellent pair. And what have they done? They've split them up. They have Lindholm with Carlo, and they have if it was Grzelcyk or whoever. I mean, depends on who they want to mix in with McAvoy. I mean, they've been mixing their pairs, but you've got 2 effective pairs, and then your third pair is pedestrian. Their third pair, the Leafs' third pair is probably better than Boston's third pair, but their top 2 pairings are much better than Toronto, and they're the ones who play 80% of the minutes.
Right.
And so defensively they're better. Team concept defensively they're better. Forwards, the Leafs have not been able to take advantage of their depth and quality of talent because of either injury or illness. And then on top of that, you have the most abysmal, atrocious special teams in the playoffs right now, where I think they've gone 1 for 12 on the power play, and they give up a power play goal every game. I don't know how they made the playoffs with special teams this bad, but the special teams only got bad in the last 2 months of the season. Power play was great. Penalty kill was okay. They've just fallen off a cliff in the last couple months, special teams wise.
OG's Converts, what say you? Jose Duarte, thank you so much for the contribution. That means a lot to us. And we have 100 people in the chat right now. And, again, it's just a lot of people who have a lot of things to say, have a lot of frustration to expend. And you can do that here. Like the content, subscribe to the channel. Once the season is over, and it seems like it's going to be over relatively soon, that does not mean you can't come back to the platform and unleash and tell us how you feel and interact with other OGs and converts.
There'll be a lot to talk about, because if they bow out meekly on Tuesday in Game 5, you're probably going to see a lot of changes fairly quickly. I'll just say this: it's like it's the habit of a fan base to zero in on one player specifically. Right. And Mitch Marner has been that guy. Okay. Mitch Marner deserves criticism. I mean, Kelly Rudy ripped him to shreds yesterday. Yeah. And it was rough. I mean,
required.
And deserved. But the thing is that I don't understand the team that sleepwalks through, and I understand the Bruins are a tough team to play against, that it's challenging to sort of fight back against that tough defensive game that they play. But the Leafs in the third period, down 3-0, showed the type of energy that you would have expected them to show in the first period at 0-0. But they only show up when they're playing, they only play desperate when they're down by 3 goals. In a 0-0 game, it's like they make bad mistakes. They don't cash in on opportunities. Now Jeremy Swayman is in their head, really.
Mike, just real quick, Toronto's outshot Boston in this series. Boston has more goals. That tells me, one, that they are taking advantage of their opportunity when the Leafs are a man down, and they're just taking advantage of their opportunities in general. Anytime there's a turnover, they're going back with it. And these cats also have a killer instinct. Elliot Friedman put it best last night during one of the intermission chats. Boston expects to win. Yeah. They expect to win this series.
Right.
And from the get-go, you could tell that, and that has not changed. The Leafs do not have the personnel to change that dynamic and flip the script. They haven't been able to this point. What makes you think that they're going to go on a 3-game run and take this series? If you believe that, I'm glad you're a believer and you love this team. Keep believing until the dying moment. But man, oh man, if you're a realist, and we've got to get real, you know as well as I do, this fucking thing is over.
Calling the Leafs and their players a bunch of losers is strong, and I think not accurate. But the Friedman point is on target. You said Boston expects to win. I think Toronto expects to lose. I think they're waiting for that one thing to say, damn. And Ryan Reeves throwing something up the middle and Van Riemsdyk scoring and them being down 1-0 early in the first period. I mean, it's like, damn it, it's not gonna be our night. And it's like so their psyche is so fragile as a team when it comes to the playoffs. It's partially a product of construct, but it's also a product of scar tissue. And this team, I don't think, their success is limited to one playoff series victory against a team that was physically and psychologically burned out after 3 Stanley Cup final appearances.
Yeah.
I give them credit. They beat Tampa Bay last year. They had to win 3 times in overtime to beat them. They weren't up to the task of Florida. And, remember, we talked about this on a previous show. I looked at the 2 teams that they potentially could meet in the playoffs. And it was like Florida, they're more talented, they're bigger, they're faster, they're more physical, and they have a better goaltending, and their defense is deep. I saw no way of the Leafs being able to beat Florida.
Mike, look at the determination the Panthers have. They went to the final last year. They feel like there's unfinished business, that this is the order of things, that after what they did, beating Boston in the first round, surprising the world, going on the run, losing in the Stanley Cup Finals. Mm-hmm. Every time they played this year, the objective was to move closer to what they believe is rightfully theirs. They went up on Tampa 3-0. There's no way Tampa's coming back in that series. They've already set the tone for the playoff run, that they want to do damage. And Boston, Mike, has done the same thing. Just looking at the 4 games. Okay.
Let me finish my point. But Boston, the advantage, do they have the better goaltending? Yes. Is their defense better? Yes. The Leafs have better forwards. The Leafs
on paper.
I know, but that's the point, Norm. That's the point. Is on paper, this series should be competitive. It should be. But the advantage that Boston has over Toronto is psychological, and they are playing that to the hilt. Marchand is in their heads. Swayman's in their heads. They've got 2 forwards that are really good in Marchand and Pasternak. And after that, they've got a bunch of workers. And the Leafs have 4 or 5 forwards that are good. And I don't know what the rest of their lineup is. And that's the problem. They're not deep. Because they're paying 4 guys $40 million.
Well, we can unpack all of that. There's no point in relitigating anything. We already know what this team is about, and we have beliefs as to what we think will at least begin to remedy the situation. Let's go back to Game 3, Mike.
Right.
Tyler Bertuzzi ties it up. And remember, Leafs had the run of the play for a while. They showed nerve in that first portion of Game 3 at home. Pretty psyched up. Bertuzzi ties it up. Mm-hmm. 30 seconds later, Brad Marchand scores to put the Bruins ahead.
And how many
times? And that was the series right there.
How many times this year has that happened, Norm, where the Leafs score a big goal and then about 20 seconds later or a minute later, the other team responds? It's like it's a lack of concentration.
And it's Brad Marchand, the rat, the guy that we all love to hate, but comes to play during playoff time. Because make no mistake, he's aware of the clock and where he sits in terms of the chronology of his career, Mike. Remember, he was the rat made his name in 2011 when they won the Stanley Cup and they beat the Vancouver Canucks. We all remember that. That was 2011. That was 14 years ago. So this dude realized that he's on borrowed time right now, and he's playing like he's as effective as he was a decade back. Mike, I want to go through just some players, and you can just let him have it. Okay. Let's start with the best player on the team, Austin Matthews. Again, he's going nowhere. He's the best goal scorer of our generation, arguably. Right. He looked great in game two. It took over, and we were all thinking. A lot of us were thinking, well, maybe foolishly slow, that now this is the coming out for him. Really, he's going to go for it, and then nothing in game three. And it's he's been sick, and it's hard to play up to peak against a tough team, especially when you're ill. Give me your impressions on him. Conclude your thoughts, and I'll give you another player. Let's just rapid fire these dudes.
Yeah, rapid fire. I mean, I again. He played great in game two. We won't know the depth of the illness until after the series, because that's just what happens during the playoffs. I mean, the issue here, like I said, is when you have 3 or 4 big players and you don't have a support cast that can pick it up, them not being at 100%, it is just ill. It's just illustrate, or it's just amplified even more. And him not being at 100% with a team that is basically playing a third line of Pontus Holmberg, Nick Robertson, and Kali Yarncroke, 2/3 of which was on the Toronto Marlies in the playoffs last year. It's fatal. So I don't blame him for the loss or for them being down 3-1. I mean, he's culpable because, he's part of the team and they need him to score goals, but there are reasons why he's not.
Right. OG's converts, have at it in the chat. Almost 150 people here right now. Everybody's just pissed off and has something to say. And we're glad that you're letting it out here on the Leafs Convo. More subscribers, please. We're over 4,000 now. It means a lot to us. And we have plenty more content to come. Like, Matthews is sick, and Nylander's a migraine, and Marner's being a petulant brat on the bench. This is the fucking playoffs, man. You guys have been around. This is nothing new. There was so much pressure on putting together a good performance here. Even if you went down swinging in Game 7, show us that you guys believe this. You as a group can do this, and here we are. Like, it's really, really disappointing, and it just goes back to the notion of changing things up and having to make the difficult decision to say goodbye to some people who've been really, really effective and productive. If it means changing the complexion of the team and changing the attitude of the team and changing the philosophy of the team. Okay, what about Mitch Marner, Mike? I mean, there was video of him on the bench throwing his gloves, and there was the speculation that William Nylander was chirping at him and Austin Matthews was chirping at him. He got ripped by Kelly Harudi and Elliot Friedman during the intermission because he was just so damn ineffective. Scores the goal, big deal. What's your take on Mitch?
Well, I mean, the thumbnail sketches, he has to be better. Whether he can be better. I mean, he looked great in the third period. He was hustling all over the place. He scored a great goal, but it's like, again, that's too little too late.
Yes,
you needed that effort and that speed and that tenacity in the first and second period when the game was in the balance. He's going to take, and maybe unfairly, he's going to take the majority of the heat for this loss in terms of the players. It's going to be, it's not going to be Matthews because Matthews scored 69 goals. It's not going to be Nylander because he had his best season. There'll be some blame pushed on the goaltending and some of the depth. It's the in terms of the star players. I mean, Tavares finished off the season great. He's 33 years old and he still scored, I think, close to 30 goals. Is he worth $11 million? No, but he's still a really good player. It's Marner. Marner's making $11 million, and he was hurt and he wasn't playing very well. And there's all the talk about a new contract and this and that. It's like, okay, I mean, he's got to be better. But he by no means is the only player who needs to be better. This team, you need 10, 15, 16 players all pushing in the same direction, all rowing in the same direction. And they just seem discombobulated and disorganized. That's something that probably falls on the coach. And I think everybody knows that if they lose this series, Sheldon Keefe is probably getting fired.
Right. And I was going to ask you about Keefe. John Tavares has not looked good in these playoffs. And again, he's getting up there in age, and you're thinking he's more of a contributor now. The money's the money. He got all that money back in 2018. Good for him. We're into the twilight of that pact. But I mean, every time he seemed to touch the puck, he was just ineffective, getting pushed. He was just not strong on it, no determination. It just seemed lost to me, and he just typifies the group. So, I mean, like, who's going to step up? It's not John Tavares.
Well, I mean, I think that they're losing this series 3-1 because of John Tavares. John Tavares scored the big goal in game 2 to tie the game. Right. He's at least up until the third period. Mitch Marner was barely a contributor in this series. William Nylander wasn't a contributor because he wasn't on the ice. So, when your roster is pared down in terms of, one of the things they were depending on was a 3-line offensive attack using Nylander or Marner on the third line, spreading out the offense to make it tougher for the Bruins to check them. Well, when Nylander is out for the first 3 games, then you put Marner and Tavares together. It's easier for them to check, and you got either Zacha or Coyle on Tavares. What you needed was Austin Matthews to dominate and the other players to dominate. I mean, right now, John Tavares is a secondary player. It's just he's on the last year of a contract and he's making $11 million. I mean, do I think he's the reason they're losing? He's the captain, and the thing is, I think everybody wants him to be a firebrand. Yeah, that comment there. Everybody wants him to be a firebrand and to come out to rip all of his teammates. Okay, that's, I didn't hear anybody complaining about Matt Sundin being a quiet captain and a quiet leader. That's what Tavares is. I mean, does that mean that what he does?
Matt was really good in the playoffs, though, Mike. He scored big goals. He was with a great team with a bunch of, dynamos and lunatics. And so it's difficult to compare.
But the thing is that people in the wake of this team being a playoff failure expect their captain to be, rah rah, sis boom ba, and that's not Tavares. He's a good guy. He's a quality player. But he's not a emotional. I mean, they brought in Ryan O'Reilly last year. They brought in players as support players.
Right.
You're not going to get that. You're not going to get physicality out of the court. Mitch Marner is not going to throw a check into the corner. He's not that player.
Right.
You cannot ask players to be something that they're not. But the problem is there's too much not with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
All right. William Nylander, 22 minutes. He had, some nice zone entries, wanted to establish some things, but you know how Boston pinches the Leafs offense off all the time. Like they give them nothing. So he tried it as he did. I mean, the results weren't there. He's kind of coming in flat-footed, and towards the end of this, I mean, I'm sure he can feel it. So, I mean, he didn't really do much, but he wasn't that bad. And again, we're always giving everybody kind of an asterisk beside their performance because, well, he hasn't been around, or he's been good last year, or he's had his best season, and so no problem.
I'll give him a C grade. It's like he wasn't the reason that they lost, but they needed players to step up, and they didn't. And, but for the failure of him to step up, that's why I give him at best an average grade. I mean, I don't know how serious the migraine situation is. Scottie Pippen sat out a game in the playoffs with the Chicago Bulls, and they lost this. I think they lost the series because he had migraines. It can be debilitating, but he was out there last night, so you have to assume that he was close to being healthy. He didn't really make any kind of an impact until the third period. He had one good scoring chance. Right now, they're in desperation mode, so they needed him to come back. He's not the reason they lost, but he didn't contribute to anything close to what they needed him to contribute.
Max Domi, I know he's trying hard and he feels like he's meant to be here and to do something positively outrageous. Was he in the box for the Marchand goal? Was that him?
Yes, I believe he was. It was either him or Edmondson. I can't remember, but I'll just say this about Max Domi. Max Domi has played well at times in the playoffs. I think he played well down the stretch with Matthews. He's a dumb hockey player. He really is. He makes dumb mistakes. He has impulse control problems. He gets drawn into stuff by Marchand. I mean, I know it's well-meaning. I'm sure he wants to win. This could be a one and done for him in Toronto, and he wants to win. But he's just made fatal errors for them in terms of his impulse control, in terms of, things that he gets drawn into. And it's just unacceptable. You need players. Yeah, he does give a crap. There's no doubt about that. But the thing is, you cannot get drawn into situations by players like Marchand and take penalties that end up killing you. And
but does he do these things if he doesn't feel like nothing's happening and doesn't feel like that the ship is sinking and that there's a sense of desperation? Like to try to do. I mean, again, you've got players we want more from, and we have players we want to dial back.
I think I used this comparison before. Josh Allen is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but one of his problems is because the supporting cast around him is not good enough at times. He has to play hero ball. He has to do everything on his own. And sometimes it's like Max Domi's got to defend the honor of the Toronto Maple Leafs when all they need him to do is play well. He takes stupid penalties. He does stupid things. I mean, he's lucky he did not get a penalty for the running into Swayman during a TV timeout. They dodged that bullet, but he continues to do stupid things that cost them games.
I do like that he has a pulse.
Oh, right? I do. I like that. I just wish it was attached to a brain that was smarter.
If the big four and Riley and goaltending could have put this team into a position of advantage, the Bertuzzis and the Domis, if not being dumb, their play is like highly accentuated and effective and becomes more positive in the potential outcome for the team. But here we are, everybody's almost like every individual for himself. And this was another point made by the panel last night, that the Bruins believe they're going to win. They're playing a team game. They have each other's backs. They don't have to overdo it. They let the play come to them. The Leafs, again, expend the energy that they do, and then Boston pounces, and they effectively so. Whereas the Leafs was looked like a collection of dudes, a bunch of guys just running around with no real, preset and no real team game that they can all play within to achieve a common goal. We've seen it through 4 games, and we're going to go into a fifth. It's going to take a minor miracle for the Maple Leafs to get it done, get back to Toronto for a game 6. But stranger things have happened, and it ain't over till it's over, Michael. You know the old Yogi Berra quote. It's certainly true, but it's it's over. Tyler Bertuzzi, Morgan Riley, anybody else? Anybody else you want to either lay into or compliment?
Well, I think actually one of the better players in this series for the Leafs has been Matthew Knies. The young legs, right. the hustle, physicality. I mean, I think the injury to Bobby McMahon was you wouldn't think that was a severely debilitating, but to have a physical forward playing in your middle six, and again, especially against a team like Boston, losing him late in the regular season to what it sounds like was a high ankle sprain was a big loss. I mean, again, I do not doubt the heart of some of these players, and the playing through things that would keep me in bed. But that's the profession that they have taken up, and that's what's expected of them when the playoffs come. And other teams suck it up, and this team, with what's going on health wise and what's going on psychologically, have not been able to fight through. And that is the legacy here. And we will cover this ad nauseum after the season whenever the season ends. But and it's not popular to say this, but I was at the end of season media availability last year with Kyle Dubas before he was let go.
Yeah.
Kyle Dubas was probably going to trade Nylander or was going to break up the core group in some way. I think he finally recognized that it wasn't going to work and that they needed to have a change of direction. And he didn't get a chance to because he was fired by Brendan Shanahan. There has been the impression out there that the real guardian of the core group has been Brendan Shanahan. And if that's the case, then Brendan Shanahan should pay for it with his job. Because, I mean, it was his plan to tank and go and get Matthews, or draft high players in the first round. They did that, and they drafted Marner and Matthews. And for most teams, that would lead to some level of playoff success, and it hasn't. And at a certain point, you had to recognize that this group wasn't going to work and that you needed to change it. And they have stuck with it, and they have paid them, and nothing has happened. And if they lose in the first round of the playoffs, again, for the 6th time in 7 years with this core group, then not only are you going to see Sheldon Keefe fired, but you may see a significant change in the structure of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And
Well,
it's disturbed.
Well, I'll tell you, the guy behind the bench was entrusted with making this group, whether flawed, exceptional, to work. And through the regular season, puck possession team, lots of goals, get into the playoffs where space is limited and goal scoring comes down, chances are everything. Sheldon Keefe hasn't allowed this group, or he hasn't allowed them. He hasn't enabled them to become the type of team they need to be to succeed in the playoffs. Remember, Cito Gaston used to fill out a lineup card, and the Leafs or the Jays would go win World Series. Sheldon Keefe can fill out a lineup card, and his team's going to score 250 goals. But in the playoffs, when it really counts, what can these guys do for you? And there's one man behind the bench who really hasn't been able to lead this team or help configure this team in a way that's going to be beneficial to their success in the playoffs. So I've got to think, and you've mentioned that, I've got to think, if they lose tomorrow night, Mike, or if they lose in this series at any point, it's not going to be long until either Brendan Shanahan or somebody, Brad Treliving, somebody makes the announcement that Sheldon Keefe and the Maple Leafs are going to part ways. You have to agree with that.
Well, if they lose in Game 5, locker clean out. Well, it's Tuesday. Game 5 is Tuesday. Locker clean out would probably be Thursday. Keefe might be fired on Wednesday.
Right.
I don't know if that's, I don't know for sure 100%, but there's just been enough chatter that, his fate is tied to the Leafs at least making some sort of run. And I don't think that's happening. So, but I think the coach situation will play itself out fairly quickly. And, there've been names bandied about who would be coming.
Sorry to interrupt you. People hate when I do it, but this is what you're 300 kilometers away. Where is that? 180 miles. Is Keefe the right coach for this group, though, Mike? And that's the thing. Like he typifies the group. He exemplifies the group. He is what's wrong with the group. Because if you bring in a John Tortorella or a Daryl Sutter or somebody like that, what the hell is he going to do with a bunch of guys who don't play the way he would want them to play? So is Keefe going to fall on his sword for this group? And is Brad Treliving quietly geeked up about what's to come, because now he has an opportunity to do what should have been done last season or the season before that, and that's break this thing up?
Well, I mean, I'll use the example of what's going on in Buffalo. Don Granato didn't get them to the playoffs. They've had 13 years of not being in the playoffs. They didn't break the losing the playoff skid this year, bringing back the same team. Now they bring in Lindy Ruff, a completely different type of coach. They're not going to bring back the same team. They can't. Lindy Ruff plays a different style. He's going to expect them to be more physical and all these other things. That's the case. That's going to be the case in Toronto. If they bring in another coach, I think with Keefe, it's been 5 years. I think they've tuned him out. I think it's at a certain point, the message gets stale, and that's it. Whether he's the right coach or the wrong coach, it's 5 years.
What gives you the right to tune out a head coach, especially when you are
they make millions of dollars? They don't. I'm sorry. That is in this league now, the players run the roost. There are very few coaches who do. Like John Cooper does, and maybe 5 or 6 others do, and the rest of them, the coach works for the players.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's really where we're, and now, I've heard rumors. I'm not going to spread them right now about what direction they may go if Keefe gets fired. But, it's going to be a change. I mean, we don't know. I never perceived that Sheldon Keefe was a player's coach, but anybody after Mike Babcock seems warm and fuzzy because he was a jerk. But now, I think that they're probably going to go back in that direction in terms of somebody who's going to hold this team accountable. And accountability was the big thing in Buffalo in terms of like Ruff coming in and holding young players accountable. Well, these guys aren't young anymore. They're in the middle of their careers. They're in their prime. They should know how to play when things count. And clearly they don't. So
hit that like button. It's free. Wow. We're having a discussion we've had before on many occasions, and we've come up with very few positive results from, and the Leafs have followed in kind. So here we are again with potentially one more game to go before locker cleanout, and things go bananas in the off season. And it's like Groundhog Day. If I pulled up our conversations at this time over the past several years, I could interchange the content and it would be relatable.
Yeah, no, and Norm, that's the infuriating thing. And I know that I'm not doing this to sort of get a pat on the back and expect well, you were right, Mike. But I've been talking about the core group being split up for 5 years.
Right.
I've been talking about that ever since they lost to Boston in 2019. That this team was not good enough defensively. And ironically, in the playoffs, and this has been borne out over the last few years, ironically, their problem in the playoffs has been they don't generate enough goals. But if you know anything, it's a team that is not particularly good defensively has to devote more energy to playing defense, especially in a playoff scenario, and then they can't be offensively creative. You have to walk and chew gum at the same time. Boston doesn't seem to have a problem with playing defense, playing physically, and scoring goals in the playoffs. Neither does Florida. Neither does Tampa. Toronto,
it's not a showcase. You don't score more goals in the postseason. You score big goals. Edward Lee, this is an intervention for Norm, for all of us. And I think intervention's a little strong right now. It's a little preemptive. That will be to come. Mike, how do you want to wrap this thing up?
Well, I'll just say this. Is it a guarantee that this team loses Game 5? No. They could come back to Toronto later this week and play a game 6. Honestly, if I were a fan with tickets, I would sell those tickets. And not that I don't think many people would buy them. But the way this team plays in the playoffs has been disgraceful in the especially at home.
Yeah.
And fans, I don't know whether they should have a lot of confidence in this team. If they win a game, maybe that infuses them with a little bit. But I came into this series thinking Boston was going to win in 7 games, and it looks like they're going to win in less than 7. And when that happens, if that happens, the changes will be coming.
These are the bloody playoffs. You earn the right to get here. We should be cohesive. We should be supportive, not divisive, but we are the latter. And it's because the team we've been supporting for so long does not deserve the accolades I'm sure they would like to hear, because the play is in the pudding, man, and you can see it. You can see what's going on. That the potential end of a run is on the horizon, and it's coming quick. It's coming quick, and whether that includes the exile of a Brendan Shanahan or the Mitch Marner lobbying him to waive his no trade clause, or a trading of another big player, it's on the horizon. It's on the horizon, and it has to be. It has to be, because it's just too much of the same, Mike. It's just too much of the same, and I think fans deserve better because of their support. But at the end of the day, the fans are the ones who can, make the loudest noise like they did last night, booing the team off the ice, and they can do that continually with things off of the ice. I don't think they'll ever fully get what they want, because fans can think so many different things. But as of right now, we should all be united in the want for change, positive change, and for that positive change to happen sooner than later. Mr. A, hockeybuzz.com is where you're writing. I'm sure it's more of the same.
Yep.
Yeah.
More of the same. Paralysis by analysis leading into game 5, and what may happen if they don't win.
Yep. Hey, if you're positive out there, remain positive. We need you. Like the content, subscribe to the channel. We'll get some activity going in community. And then if the Leafs play on Monday, might be a post-game show. We might push it into Tuesday. You have to stay connected with the project to know what we're going to do, and it's beneficial to you because, hey, everything that we put together in a collaborative way is to entertain you, to educate you, to annoy you, whatever we can possibly do to keep you on board, because we're all in this together. For Mr. A, I'm Norm. Enjoy your Sunday. Enjoy Game 5. It's coming quick. The Leafs Convo is out.